I think we're about ready to get started, guys. If somebody wants to show up in a little bit, there's no problems at all. I don't have anything against that. My name's Allan. I've done a couple of these little workshops before for everybody. This is always a good, fun time. It's very friendly. You guys can ask any questions you want. There's no holds on nothing, guys. We're basically going to focus a lot on organics today, what organics is, what it does, how it is used in agriculture. There's going to be some terminology and different things like that. But I guess I want to start by just talking about myself a little bit, my own background, my own experience, because that's pretty much the only thing I have to share today. I worked in a lot of greenhouses growing food, a lot of peppers, tomatoes in vines in greenhouses, and then both indoor and outdoor organic and lettuce operations, all for profit. So I've worked on quite a few different farms. I've done a lot of pond management. I have a background in urban agriculture at Owens Community College. And then I went to Ohio State for raising fish, aquaponics and aquaculture. So I know water quality and then I know plants. And all of this comes together, especially in indoor agriculture where it's very intensive and very costly and very easy to make a mistake. And so here I am now in not having to work in a 90-degree greenhouse all the time and just selling the equipment. It's much easier, cooler, cleaner, and I'm definitely not sweating it. So if there's any questions you have along the way, please raise your hand. I'll try and call on you. I'll try and see you. I'll try and work through these slides as easy as I can and make it as understandable as possible, but if there's something you don't get, please feel free to ask. Today we're going to just touch a little bit on plant science and soil science. I did a whole 2-hour class on that here a few Saturdays ago that I'm sure is online. You probably don't want to suffer through all that. So we're going to just touch on a little bit on the parts of the plant, why and how. We're going to talk about super soil, living soil, water-only soil, which is all examples up here of different super soils that are available just buying here at the store that are already ready made and ready to plant in. They are the most expensive bags here in the store. They're the most nutrient-dense bags that we have. Good to see you, man. And today we're going to talk about making your own, the tools that you need and what you're going to have to do to kind of absorb what all these companies are doing and apply it under your own standards. We're going to talk about a little bit of the definition of being organic and natural versus what people say is synthetic nutrients, man-made nutrients, building the soil, using these soils in such a way that you build a container in a way that the plant gets everything it needs during its growth cycle. And also, all of this living soil and organics comes in and is catered onto by the compost teas, spikes, layers, and amendments that we talk about too, which is a lot of the organic section in the store is all these different dry amendments that are in boxes. In bags that you can use. A lot of them are very slow to be broken down and uptaken by the plants, so you have to kind of be ahead of the game on all this and prepare your soil in advance so that it's ready when your plants need it. A little quick rundown of how plants work. Obviously, photosynthesis, guys, it's very easy, basic knowledge, but sometimes we just need to refresh. Sometimes people haven't even seen anything like this. But we use lights and sun. Leaves are like solar panels, guys. They use energy in the same sense. There's a vascular system in these plants where they can uptake nutrients and water that has minerals in it from the soil. Okay, and all of this gives oxygen that we breathe. All right, circle of life. Little anatomy of the plant. There's roots and shoots. You can kind of see where the shoot is. There's nodes. A lot of people talk about nodes, and that's where the leaf comes out and your main stem keeps going. And there's internodes as well. The internode is the space in between the nodes. And when you get really into this stuff, there's different spacing and stretching that happens and different stresses you can make the plant do to not stretch as much, especially when you have low ceilings or something like that indoors. Anytime you have a leaf, that little stem that goes from the leaf to the main stem is called the petiole. There's veins inside the leaves. There's microscopic pores where they breathe. And there's a lot of the same living stuff going on in a plant, like what goes on in humans, but definitely very different. There's male and female plants. This is a definition of a female plant right there. That's some of the earliest signs of a female plant is what you see in that node right there. And those are sexual reproductive parts of a plant. We're not really going to get into that. This is a very good example of the perfect clone that somebody could cut. There's 3 different nodes that are very clear, and you can see the terminal shoot is always the middle main shoot that carries the most nutrients and the most hormones and the most growth throughout the plant. And so something like that would make a great clone. Obviously, you would cut away some of this stuff before you try to get some roots off of it, but that's a great picture. This is just another example of what plants need to get through their phase. All plants want to do is reproduce and make a seed. That's what everything's goal is on this planet. And so using all this stuff together, if it has short of any one of these items, that's not going to happen at all. So without any of this, it's not going to happen. It takes a lot to make this plant go from start to finish. Plants not only absorb nutrients from the roots, but they also absorb nutrients through their skin. You can spray nutrients onto a plant and it can be absorbed. This is an example of the different nutrients a plant can absorb through the skin. There's, of these 14 different nutrients on the periodic table that plants use, there's macros and micros. There's nutrients that the plants use in large amounts. There's nutrients that the plants use in very small micro amounts. Every bottle in the store is required, I believe by law, to have an NPK value. Every bottle has 3 numbers on it. Even a lot of those cardboard boxes all have 3 numbers on them. That's the NPK. These are the first top 3 nutrients used by the plant, and they're dominated in the plant. That's what you need the most of. A lot of this other stuff starts getting smaller as you go down, but it needs all of that stuff in the right quantities in order to complete its life cycle.
On the bottle, it's actually a guaranteed analysis, like required by law to have. It has to, if you were to have it tested, if it fails below that or comes up below that, we get, like, a manufacturer gets in trouble.
Got to be consistent.
Yeah, so it's the guaranteed analysis.
Just like nutrition facts on food.
Yep.
This is a pH chart that we see a lot. These are all the different nutrients that plants use. There's a sweet spot around here in the pH balance where these nutrients become available. The biggest thing to take from here is if the pH swings a little bit too much one way or a little bit too much another way, you can add as much of this nutrient as you want, but the plant's not going to be able to take it up. Phosphorus is typically one of the most delicate nutrients, but also the biggest flower building nutrient needed for cannabis specific. I think this is another pH chart where it really talks, a little bit about what happens here. You end up running into, damage in the root zone or something toxic that can end up possibly picking up heavy metals out of the soil that you probably don't want to be using on your lungs. This is just a little example of how the plant's vascular system works and how the plant uses different bacterias and fungi in the soil to help it absorb nutrients. There's 2 different liquids inside the plant, the xylem and the phloem. That's what these words are right here. They're not as easy to pronounce when you see them, but when they're referred to as xylem and phloem, the plant uptakes water and mineral. It's always called the xylem. Once it converts that into its nutrient that it can then send throughout the plant and do what it needs to do. It's called the phloem. And so I think it's important to understand this process. These little balls or nodules are nitrogen fixating fungi that grows on the root zone, so they can actually pull nitrogen out of the air and feed it to the plants. That's a real thing. It can happen, and it happens in very, very microscopic amounts on the root zone that we can't see with our human eye. Moving from plants to soil now, guys. We're just going to do a little bit of soil science here before we dig into the organics and how to make one of these super soils. What makes a good soil? Soil is made out of primarily 4 different substances: sand, silt, and clay, and then organic matter. And so no matter where you're at in the United States, there's a texture to the soil that you stand on, and it's a combination mostly of sand, silt, and clay. Obviously out in Oklahoma, Arkansas, the red dirt roads, that's mostly clay there where they're at. Where we're at here, Lucas County, Black Swamp, we have a lot of silt, clay, and even a lot of real sandy areas around here as well. And so in agriculture, there's a lot of science that comes to a farmer's field, and there's national resource soil groups that have mapped and charted soils across the whole United States. They have your soil on a map somewhere online, and it's all a mixture of sand, silt, clay, and organic matter. They all use this chart to grade your soil that you have. And for the most part, when it comes to growing plants, what I want you to take from this chart is a combination of everything creates a loamy soil. The word is loam. It's a very good combination of sand, silt, and clay for moisture holding, air holding, water holding capacity. Some of the best soils are a loamy soil when you read about it or talk about it. Organic matter. Organic matter comes from all the living things in this world that have decomposed, guys. All the leaf litter, woody material, plant and animal waste. Traditional farming, you have chicken waste, cow waste, pig waste, and all that is composted in facilities around the world to use in agriculture. It's some of the best nutrients you can use. All this stuff decays into organic matter or compost. Once everything stops decaying because it's decayed as much as it could possibly decay, it's called humus. Organic matter dramatically improves the soil's ability to hold water, nutrients, and also allows their slow release. This is ideal for plant growth, guys. So the more organic matter you can put in your soil, the better ability it is as a sponge. It can hold on to your nutrients. It can store them for when the plant needs them. It caters to all the microbes and bacteria that you need to break down these nutrients and make them plant available. The more organic matter in your soil, the better. Bottom line. These soils up here are almost entirely organic matter. There's very little sand, silt, or clay in any one of these bags. Soil across the nation is also graded in layers. Every layer has a designated zone. This chart describes how any soil scientist would come in and probe your soil and show you the layers. Anywhere you go in the world, you're going to see all of these layers. Except if you're in like a urban environment where stuff's been really messed with quite a bit. But you'll always see that little small thin organic layer on the top. You'll always see a little mix underneath that, and then there's your sand, silt, or clay mixture underneath that that gets graded. And they're all called soil layers or soil horizons. This is a real thing, and it's studied all the time. In the soil, with all this organic matter, there's a food chain going on. It's just like the African desert, you know, there's lions eating hyenas, and the same thing is happening down in the soil, except on a microscopic level, guys. Very, very small fungi and bacteria, and it works its way right up the food chain, just like what we know today is a common food chain. It's real, it happens, it's very delicate, just like it is on the planet today that we know it, but it exists, and you can't see it. And the more that you can cater to it, the better your plants are going to do. The functions of organic matter, a lot of the stuff like that falls from the trees in the forest, obviously it falls to the forest floor and decays and eventually becomes nutrients. That's all called detritus in the science field. You call that stuff detritus, and it breaks down into compost and organic matter, and eventually that humus, where it's full of plant available nutrients, and it's a sponge. And so organic matter stores nutrients, makes them available, holds water, filters water. So the more organic matter that you can have, the cleaner everything's going to be, the more regenerative you can be, the more sustainable you can be. For many reasons, you want to cater to this little small organic layer. Yeah.
If it's the more the better, could like just straight organic matter with that? Is that a dumb
Yeah,
question?
that's definitely not a dumb question at all. All these soils up here are almost entirely organic matter. They're peat moss based substrates, where you'll find almost no sand, silt, or clay in them. So it is absolutely good to grow in entirely organic matter. There's definitely different ways and tools you can use, whether you're indoors or outdoors, to cater to this organic matter. The number one is a compost pile. Back in the day, everybody had one. But there's a lot of things you can add into a compost pile that will break down into plant nutrients. There's also green manures or cover crops that you can use, which is different things like clovers and beans and radishes and things that are used to hold the soil together, that can pull nitrogen out of the atmosphere and put it in the soil, different ryes, things that are very, very beneficial and only add to the organic matter. Organic matter, this gets a little bit scientific. It increases the CEC, which is called a cation exchange capacity. Nutrients have charge to them. It's very small electrical charge, and that's how plants take up nutrients. So this increase in organic matter also, how's it going, guys? Welcome. The more you can increase organic matter, the higher you increase the cation exchange capacity, which really helps the ability of the soil to hold on to nutrients and have them ready for the plant whenever they need it. And so there's a few nutrients that are really, really catered when it comes to this: calcium, magnesium, potassium. All that stuff really holds on really well in organic matter. Different things that you can compost. I wanted to put on here real quick, guys. I can have a whole workshop on composting. A lot of times when you get into building your own soils and growing organically, you'll have a little worm farm at your house. Sometimes you just use it in season and have it your compost outside, but you can also have a little worm farm in your house, and you can have anything like what's on this list in there. Try and avoid any kind of meat or dairy products, citrus and onions in your compost pile. Animal waste is only good if it's been composted for 3, 4, 5 years. Then it really becomes good and usable for the garden. But other than that, it's really hard to say that you won't do more harm than good.
Quick question.
Yeah.
Why the citrus and onions?
It really plays a lot with pH and killing the bacteria instead of promoting it. You know, and so the more stimulant and bacteria growth you can have, the faster that compost is going to break down and create nutrients.
How about with bokashi composting?
Oh, that's perfect. It's beautiful. And that is a bokashi composting is a product made by Builder Soil that you can add into a compost pile that stimulates it. It absolutely stimulates it. It caters to that microbe environment. It feeds it, and it will speed up composting.
So is it still okay to put citrus and onion in a bokashi compost?
I would always avoid that citrus and onions if you can. Yep. And if you have like a little worm farm and you're throwing stuff in it, you'll see what the worms start to gravitate towards and what they'll stay away from. And there are worms, they'll stay away from onions all day long, but they'll crawl all up in a banana.
Alan, so like toilet paper rolls, I save them up to use for burn for starter fires.
Yeah.
But in my garden, I threw all that in there now.
Beautiful.
Because I found out the worms like to get up underneath the paper towel.
Oh, yeah.
Shred them up.
Yep. Especially when they're damp.
Right,
You
a
know.
little moisture, a little more.
Yep. And there's green manures that you can use as cover crops too, like I said, that are listed here. And you see them a lot where farmers will put a cover crop in after they harvested their corn or something like that. All that holds the soil together. It adds nutrients to the soil the next year when they just till it over. When you have these high winds and rain throughout the winter and spring, it doesn't wash away that organic layer that you have on top, that very precious layer. And so there's a lot of values to the green manures. There's little clover cover crop blends that they sell over there too, where you can use that indoors as well. Shading the soil is huge, especially on a hot day. The sun can do some damage to the microbial environment if you don't have mulch layer or something to keep it at bay. Because you got to remember that organic layer is on top. Sun beating on it can really kill all that stuff pretty quick. This is a little chart to help you understand the cation exchange capacity and why it's helpful. So negatively charged conditioner particles hold and store positively charged cations. And so that conditioner particle is organic material, guys. And so any kind of organic matter is like a sponge. It holds nutrients just like a magnet, and then it hangs out right there by the plant root and doesn't exchange. Okay, so these bacterias and fungi, they're living with the root, they're living on the root, near the root, and there's a constant exchange going. Roots don't just soak up water and minerals, they also sweat and exude. And so there's a trade going on where both are benefiting, and I'm not sure if one could quite live as well without the other. And this is just a great example of how catering to that microbial environment and adding to the organic matter really helps with the nutrient exchange and pickup. You can really get deep into cation exchange capacity and understanding the charges on some of these nutrients and how easy it is for them to wash away and get picked up by the plant as well. Guys, organic versus synthetic. This is a debate. This is a huge debate, and I think it always will be. I think there's room and time and a place for all, but I think that when it comes to sustainable agriculture and regenerative agriculture, not having to rely on the man to grow your own food, growing good soil and being a good steward of the land is pertinent, guys. It's only going to benefit the future and you. And so when it comes to organic versus synthetic, I just wrote a few things down here that come to the top of my head. Quality of smoke. I've been an organic cannabis grower for I was doing the math, almost 17 years, guys. I've been mixing my own soils back to back to back and using them. And I consider myself to have very sensitive lungs. My dad has very sensitive lungs. He's an old man, and I was always happy to grow the medicine that we used. I trusted in it, and it was always time and time again better than any product I could ever get anywhere else. When I started growing pot, I absolutely used Fox Farm over here and killed it, did a great job. I had young teenage lungs at the time, and I eventually graduated into the organic agriculture and building your own soils, staying ahead of the game, and really coming out with some great product. And so Organic gardening improves the soil quality. You get to see the plant's expression and genetic potential. And so in a synthetic environment, you can kind of steer these plants in directions that they wouldn't typically show in that organic environment. You could overload them on things to kind of bulk them up, increase things. Obviously yields and weight. When it comes to money and indoor agriculture, it's very intense, and profitability, it drives the market. And so microbial testing for organics, it makes it hard for organics to be on the shelf in any dispensary, especially in the state of Michigan. These things have to pass microbial testing, and the main thing you're using to grow your organic cannabis is microbes. So it's really not easy to pass a testing standard to get on a shelf in Michigan. They make it that way. It's highly political. But this doesn't mean you can't grow good, clean product organically at all. Synthetics are available and they work much quicker. Organics takes much longer to become plant available. It takes quite a bit of time for you to turn the stuff into a box and powder into what's plant available. You know, microbes take time to break it down. So if you don't get ahead of the game, if you're not planning ahead, this doesn't really work out. You should stay probably with the synthetic feed charts because if you make a batch of soil and you plant into it too early, you're never going to get the effects that you want, ever. Obviously, organic nutrients are derived from plant and animal sources, while synthetic fertilizers are man-made compounds like ammonium nitrate, ammonium phosphate, potassium sulfate, and so on and so forth. It's the way people can bottle these up and feed them to the plants. Today's class, and one of the main things we're going to do is learn how to do this on our own, guys. This is the same bag of soil, and I pulled that off their website last night. That's the same size. In the store here, these are $30 a bag, but that's expensive, guys. That is very expensive. It does not cost that much to do this. And I think Build a Soil is a great company and sells a fantastic product. But if you have any interest at all in doing it yourself, it's a lot easier than you think it is, and it's a lot cheaper than you think it is.
How many plants will a bag of soil do? I mean, for $50, how many plants are they going to get out of that?
Build a Soil conveniently sells a 1 cubic foot bag, where all the other bags are 1.5 cubic foot. And so where all the other bags would fill a 10-gallon pot, this would struggle to fill a 10-gallon pot.
So 2 5-gallon, so 2 plants for $50.
Yeah, 2 plants for $50. And so all of these soils up here, whether it be Coast of Maine, Sohum, Rocket Fuel, Build a Soil, they all sell a very nutrient dense, ready to use potting mix. Their price is high on all of them. They all have massive amounts of organic matter. Aeration in all these bags is perlite, pumice, rice hulls a lot of times. These organic soils need a combination of microbes, bacteria, and fungi in order to properly be utilized. If you don't have a good, clean water source to cater to the microbial environment, the very delicate microbial environment in there, it's not going to be worth it to buy this at all. You need good, clean water. It's not city water out of a tap. It's filtered city water. It's quite often reverse osmosis water, where it would be 0 ppm water, if you can. Very, very delicate microlife down in the soil. Very easy to kill it, knock it out of balance. And so that's why it's very important to use a good, clean water source when you're using any of these living soils. Yeah.
So if you have water and all you really can afford is the tap water that you're paying a nominal rate for, can you just set it out, like with my regular plants, I just set it out for a day and let it,
And let like
get
the
out of it.
chlorine evaporate. Yeah, you
Is
can
that still
absolutely
gonna
do
be good?
that. Yep, you can do that. There's still other things in that water that won't evaporate, like the chlorine. There's chloramines and other things that'll show up on a ppm meter if you was to stick a ppm meter in it. And you want that ppm meter to go as close to zero as you can possibly get it. Not saying this won't work for you at all. You will still see some good results. But in order to really cater to the plant the best you can, use the cleanest water you possibly can.
Can I piggyback on that? Would you suggest using a dechlorinator?
I was just gonna say microbial life. Yeah.
Like they use?
There's definitely, something that could speed up that evaporation process as well. They sell a deep chlorinator. And a lot of people use it in the fish tank industry as well, for your tap water to make it clean enough to not hurt the fish. Fish are very delicate to pH and water quality as well. Living soils can be made at home. I've done it for a long time. You have to plan ahead. 30 days at least, guys, that's what I like to say. Some of the books and recipes out there will say 15 days. Just know that no matter how many days your soil that you cooks for, it's never going to lose any nutrients over time. They're not going to evaporate into the air. And so you could mix your own bags of soil and store them for months, and they'll be just as potent as they were the 2-week period after you made it. There's multiple proven recipes, yada yada yada, 17 years. Just like baking brownies, guys, there's a recipe. You can prepare your own super soil with very little effort. Some of the things you might need: pH meter, TDS meter, which is an EC meter. It tells you how clean your water is. pH meter really helps with troubleshooting. If your plants aren't growing right, you can kind of figure out what's going on very easily with those instruments. They're delicate, they cost a lot of money, but they certainly pay for themselves. An opaque tea maker, a bubbler, or a 5-gallon bucket. All these organic soils benefit dramatically with organic compost teas. And that's where you get a little 5-gallon bucket, you get a little air stone. Yeah.
Clean water, what pH are you using for?
And so that's a great question. You want to stay somewhere between 5.5 and 6.5. Bottom line, regardless. If you have a source of reverse osmosis water, the pH is very unstable. I would not pH it at all. That pH has the ability to go wherever it wants to be. There's nothing holding pH stable in an RO environment. So I would never try and add pH up or down to an RO water. That's just me and the experience that I've had for quite some time with fabulous results. So as long as you have a great, good, clean water source that's reverse osmosis, I would not add any pH or up or down. I wouldn't even check it. But if you're using tap water from the city or something like that that's got some solids in it,
What about well water that has high pH?
I would definitely lower that pH, some way or another. And you can use quite a bit of different things to lower the pH, even organically. Lemon juice will do it, or coffee grounds in the soil, or any different acidic thing like that will help to lower that. Air pump and air stone. It's like the little air pump you see in a fish tank with a little air stone that bubbles. Perfect for compost teas. Measuring spoons, measuring cups, garbage cans, or compost tumblers. It's a little picture of a compost tumbler. I have a couple of those in my basement, and that's where I put all my soils together, and I just tumble them once a day. Hi guys. How are you doing? Good. Welcome, welcome. And compost tumblers really help, guys. These are what you use to agitate your soil and let it go for a couple weeks before you use it. So that good clean water. Garbage cans, if you use them, I recommend drilling holes down the side, letting air get in there. When you try making all this organic soils yourself, and you don't let air get to the mixture, it starts to smell like a swamp. And if you don't agitate it enough, it starts to smell bad. You want it to smell good and earthy. You want to introduce air to it quite often. Air kills bad bacteria. And what bad bacteria is going to do if you let that stinky soil sit there and bake, it'll take all the nitrogen and just off gas it into the air. You can lose your nutrients if you don't agitate it enough and keep air involved in it. And so when you're making your soils, you want to make sure you agitate them once a day, once every other day, until they finish their process. They'll heat up and then they'll cool down. True living soils, they require a little bit different style of thinking. Somewhere along the line, guys, a while ago, cannabis growers, they started taking decisions away from the plant. After that, they even took away the soil from the plant. You see a lot of soilless commercial cannabis grows now. These plants are force-fed, maximum productivity and profits. They took away a lot of the natural sources of elements and minerals and replaced them with synthetic fertilizers. And we see that everywhere in the store here, guys. It works. Organic gardening uses the power of the microlife that you're growing to let the plant feed itself what it needs when it needs it. It puts the plant in charge. You really see the true genetic expression when you're using this organic gardening technique. That's why it's very, very important to use good genetics, because you'll see your shitty bag seed versus something that you really track down with a friendly breeder. Roots, guys, we talked about how roots don't only pick up water and minerals, but they also exude stuff. They communicate a lot with the microlife down in the soil. It's all on a microscopic level. And so the microlife create the nutrients that the plant requires. So catering to the soil, growing good soil will, in return, grow the great plants for you. And so a lot of times when you're using these techniques with this organic, you're really putting a lot of time and effort into the soil, putting a lot of attention and detail into the soil, and that soil is going to really, really grow a good plant for you guys. You'll see this book right here, guys, that I plug a lot in all of these. This book right here is something that I lived by for a long time. This book is all written in, it's got bookmarks in it and dirty spots all over the place, but this book is a complete guide to what's going on here and reasons of why. There's more recipes and compost tea details and different things in this book than what I could ever provide. But I think everybody should probably pick up this book if this organic gardening interests you.
Who's the author?
The Rev.
The Rev?
The Rev.
Probably like on the 4th edition by now, too.
Yeah, there's definitely updated versions. That says the 2nd edition. This is the 1st edition. I don't even know when I bought this.
2014.
Oh my God, I don't even know.
I would say 2014.
But there's other books up here too that I've used along the way. They're books that really tripped my trigger. They made me dive into it. They made me understand it. They're very easy to read and understand books. A lot of people don't get into books no more. And you can buy this on your phone and look through it on your phone. But nothing's better than opening this book up and following the recipe that it's in and looking at the container pictures and the whys and hows of what you should do. Easier than looking at your phone, I tell you. There's a delicate symbiotic relationship going on down there in the root zone. It could be really messed up easy by a lot of these products on the shelf that have the organic symbol on them. They say they're organic, but they absolutely can mess up the microlife that's going down in the soil. The recipes and the techniques used today, if you go and take some Tiger Bloom off the shelf, you can fuck that whole system up real easy. Excuse my language, sorry.
Grounded.
Telling your mother.
Yeah. The soil we make, guys, it's alive. There's a food chain going on down there. There's a lot of delicate things going on that you can't see. And so using good clean water sources and sticking to the water only techniques and maybe compost teas every couple weeks, you really shouldn't do anything other than that. You shouldn't be trying to pick bottles off the shelf and saying, let me fix this real quick. That's not how it works. You brew teas, yeah, every couple weeks. Obviously take good care of the soil will take good care of you. Learning to grow your cannabis organically will most likely result in you growing the finest top shelf marijuana that you will ever cultivate. You will experience totally natural cannabis, maybe for the first time in your life, and maybe even come to some of you guys today when you come and seen this jar right here on your way out of the class, and maybe you want to smell that. It might be the first time you ever smelled anything like something like this, but it truly is superior. That's why I brought it up, to show underneath the microscope and to show you guys, because this stuff turns heads. This stuff makes people ask about it and talk about it and come back for it, especially when you're using it for medicinal value. You have a very sensitive patient that can really tell the difference between something that was loaded up with salts or grown organically like this. There is a difference. Just like in modern agriculture and food, there's much more nutrient dense organic fruits and vegetables than what they are in a greenhouse production. So, when it comes to building your own soil, guys, these are all the different things that you're going to want to put on your shopping list. And we'll probably see this in the future. I also pass out little flyers up at the counter when somebody's interested in organics, and talks a lot about all this stuff and used in the right amounts to make your own super soil. We talk about rock phosphate, bone meal, earthworm castings and green sand, blood meal, feather meal, alfalfa meal, kelp meal. Everything's a meal. Everything's chopped up. It helps with the breakdown from the microbes and bacteria. All of this stuff is an amendment that you can put in your soil to help fix nutrient deficiencies or to add and cater to the microlife in the soil. I really didn't want to go through all of this stuff, but it's just like you would think. You know, a bone meal, if you think about it, it's really going to be a good source of calcium. Crab and lobsters and shell. Do you have a question?
I do.
Yeah.
So I see right there where it says rabbit and farm animal manure.
Yeah,
Okay, which I use a lot.
absolutely.
But can you use too much? Can you burn it out?
You can use too much, but more than anything, you can put it on too early. You know, and rabbit's a little bit easier in the garden than some other things, less potent. But what happens when you put it on too early is it ends up robbing the soil of nitrogen, trying to break down that manure. All the microbes and microlife is now focused on breaking down that manure and not creating nutrients for the plants.
So I have a fairly big compost area, and I mix it with leaves and all my compost in there, and like horse manure.
Yeah.
And rabbit I keep separate, and rabbit manure, rabbit poop I do different. So don't do it this early, or do it when you mix in your dirt, because I use the true for my garden.
Right.
So I mix it right in the dirt.
Okay. Rabbit is a little bit easier on plants to be added sooner. But
Okay.
when it comes to like chicken manure or anything like that, you want to give it a good maybe 2, 3 to 5 years before you use it. That's the general overall from all your agriculture extensions, especially when it comes to growing food.
Well, I think when you say 5 years, this stuff has been sitting for probably close to a year and a half. Next door, we go over there and get theirs, but I don't want it to be. It's not strong. It doesn't smell strong
Good.
compared to the new stuff.
And as long as it looks well broken down as well, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where it's starting to turn into what looks like soil.
Yeah.
You know, you can't really make out what it is anymore. It should be working on its way to being plant available by then.
Okay.
If you can, always pull from the back of your compost instead of
Yeah.
pulling from the front. You add to the front, pull from the back. Keep that. The more you toss and turn your compost, the quicker all that happens as well.
Is there a way to speed up that process of breaking down the cover with a black tarp for heat or anything
There
like
is.
that?
Yep. Heat dramatically increases the microbe life that's going
Dramatically,
on.
not marginally?
Say what?
You said dramatically?
Oh yeah,
changes things?
dramatically. Yep, exponentially.
Okay.
To an extent, you get up to the 130 or 40 degree mark, and you're probably going to start doing more harm than well.
Okay.
Hold on 1 second. Let me get him real quick.
Can Epsom salt be used in like this living soil style of gardening, or is that the salt that is used in synthetics?
It can be used in very, very, very small amounts. And a lot of times what you want to do when you do use that is you'll pre-mix it in with your mix before your plant ever goes in. And you can do it like that, but very, very small amounts, you're more than welcome to use Epsom salt.
Yeah, I see like rock salt phosphate up there for something to add in sulfur. Are there any other things that can be used to add in sulfur as well too?
There is. Gypsum is sulfur based, and that's a very, very good soil conditioner to use as well. Highly attributed to taste and smell in all plants. Yeah. What did you make? The green sand is like a azomite or something that really caters to the micronutrient content. And so just like azomite or green sand or man, what's the one I'm thinking of? I can't think of right now. More micronutrients than anything. Absolutely.
That's all it is.
You'll see also where it says like a plant hormone. Alfalfa meal will cater to a hormone. That has to do with flower density, node stretch, and different things like that. And it would be an organic way to add hormone to that mix. A lot of times we kind of stay away from things like that. We call them PGRs, but in an organic environment, it's there whether you know it or not. And you can cater to it a little bit with alfalfa meal and things like seaweed. Seaweed always does that. Is there any other questions?
Well, the bark mulch, that's hard to say. Do you guys sell that, or how do you know that it's organic, or can you just buy it at Lowe's or something? Or?
We sell a bark mulch here. It's definitely a lot more expensive than what you could find at Lowe's, but a little bit more catered for the indoor agriculture application. It's probably been kiln dried at one point in time to try and stave off any kind of bad microbes and bacteria that you could introduce. And so, and there's also other products here that I really like bark mulch. There's called cocoa croutons, where it's like little square coconut acquired chips. I love using those as mulch. And you can reuse them time and time again. So when you build pots, whether it be a 3-gallon or a 5-gallon pot, you always want a layer of mulch on top of it. Really helps keep things evenly on the moisture content, and it helps the microbes and bacteria thrive up there at the top. And you can always take that mulch off and reuse it time and time and time again. The mulch is good to go. You don't have to throw it away. Oyster shells, obviously a lot of calcium. Animal manure, I love cow and horse compost, rabbit compost, alpaca manure, different things like that. They're beautiful, especially to make your compost teas with. You only need just a little bit of them.
A lot of universities that have agriculture programs, you can buy like already, like Howie said, you gotta wait like 5 years or so. They have it already processed. Like I live by Michigan State, and you can go get it processed cow manure. So
And the farther you go out in a rural area, you'll see wherever you see horses will be a mound somewhere. And chances are the other side of that mound has got some goodness on it. And they'll all let you come and get it too. They'll all let you come take all the shit you want.
I know Jeremy, the dude for Build a Soul, he's says when it comes to the living soils, he recommends like at least 15-gallon pots and everything. Is it still like sustainable and really reasonable to do it in 3 to 5 gallons?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I flowered out in 3-gallon pots for over 10 years. Back to back to back, 4 harvests a year.
I would say the skill level of someone in a 3 to a 5 needs to be a little bit more than a novice.
Right.
Because you're asking the plant to do a lot more for you and with a lot less energy, essentially. So what he's setting you up in a 15-gallon is to make sure that you're gonna have a more soil to than root ratio, and your plants won't run out of energy. So he's basically trying to set you up for success right off the bat with a 15.
Yep. Absolutely. And so, yeah, like he said too, going to that 3-gallon pot, you have to understand that there's a lot less nutrition there. You can't grow as big of a plant there. So flipping into a flower phase a lot earlier.
Everything has to be exactly on top.
Yep, having a higher plant count overall because you have to use up that much space that you're paying for as well. Rice is always a good ingredient that I've always used, and never forget, guys. Rice really caters to the fungi and bacteria when it comes to making your own soil blend. This next page, oh no, not this next page, but
Can you use rice in indoor plants?
yeah, absolutely.
Really?
Yep. Now it takes a long time to kind of break down, and all these ingredients do. And so when you're making these soils and making these mixes, it's important to make them about 30 days before you put plants into them. And so it takes about that long for some things to get broken down and become plant available. And over time, that rice helps out a lot. Yep, absolutely.
Is it okay to steam it versus boiling it, the rice?
You know, I wouldn't.
Well,
I don't do anything to it at all.
Just put
rice
it in.
hulls.
Yep.
Yeah.
Rice
Yep.
hulls. Yes, not rice, not rice.
No, it's rice. It's absolutely rice. I wouldn't.
If you're
Yeah.
using rice.
Rice hulls are a totally different
If you're
purpose.
gonna use rice, though, there's so much more at play, cause once it gets wet, it becomes moisture holding capacity.
Absolutely.
So,
Yep.
you know, as long as you understand what you're using, yes.
Yep.
Thank you.
You wouldn't use it in a succulent plant or,
Probably not.
no, I see what he's saying when he's talking about moisture holding.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
And a lot of times you won't ever see the rice either. By the time it comes planting time, it'll be long gone. It wouldn't even, sometimes sprout and then decompose, or fungus eats it up in general. Oats are another thing that you can add into your super soil mix right out of the oats container that you cook oatmeal with. Really helps cater to the fungal development and it gets it stimulated. So bacteria grows a lot faster than fungi. You want a great environment of both. And so if you can cater a little bit more towards the fungi when everything's going on, you're kind of helping speed up that process, even things out a little bit.
So it wouldn't be a bad idea to add some rice to compost? or
Yes,
whatever
in
you
small amounts. Yep, and
Small
you'll see the recipe on the next page. It will talk about all those amounts and what quantities to use. This is one I wanted to get through real quick because all these are just, we sell these brands of bacteria and fungi, spores and inoculants in probably a dozen, maybe more different brands here in the store. These are just 6 quick pictures that I put up last night. And all these products have brand names and marketing tactics, but ultimately they all on the back have different species of microbes and bacteria. And these are all different products you can introduce into your soil to help stimulate the microbe and bacteria population. And a lot of these live on your plant root, some don't, but all of them help to break down nutrients and make them plant available. So when you're doing this kind of gardening, it's always important to try and have at least one of these products, usually a couple different of these products that you use at least once a week. Same book. This is the Revs 2.1 Master Soil Mix Recipe. You must cook your mix. We're going to go over that. This is it, guys. This is the recipe. This is what I hand out a lot. And this is what one batch of the recipe is. And I'm sure this will end up being on YouTube as well. And I can print this out for anybody that wants it as well. I just didn't have the capacity to do it today. But you can start off, every time I made this mix, I've made this mix probably over 100 times. I always do it 2 times. So every time I go down this list, I'll double every number on here when I'm making it in my compost tumblers. I have a cement mixer in my basement where I
Of
just
course
plug
you
it
do.
in and the cement mixer turns around and I sit there with a measuring cup and I just start throwing stuff in. This stuff I add to a 5-gallon bucket, whether it be Pro Mix or Root 707 or anything like that. That's your good organic soil mix that's required. Perlite, cocoa coir, worm castings. It doesn't really matter what brand you use, but try to use clean stuff that hasn't been sitting outside soaking wet with a bunch of bacteria in it already. Dry amendments, all this stuff we just looked at a couple slides ago. All this stuff is available in small and large quantities. And if it's not here, we'll get it for you. A lot of this stuff is a little bit general. You'll see a lot of it has the NPK ratio on it that you can find something similar to. Some of it's granular, some of it's powdered, some of it's pelletized. I really don't think it matters too much in all my experience. When it talks about composted cow manure, that doesn't mean you can't use composted lobster compost or any other compost to make this happen. Just understand that this mix right here is something that I've used for many years, time and time again, tried and true. Sean here in the back can attest to well over 14 years of this recipe, making fantastic flour that never ever once didn't sell.
It says up there, earthworm castings. What is earthworm castings?
If you earthworms actually have a little poo
Yeah.
that comes out. That's earthworm poo, and
Okay.
and people bag it up and sell it. We sell 15-pound bags and 25-pound bags of earthworm castings, and what they are more than anything is it's a sponge to hold on to nutrients in the soil.
Son of a gun.
This is only $12 a bag, which
Wiggle
is pretty affordable, honestly. This is what I used, made my sunflowers like 12 foot tall.
You know, and they're not like super nutrient dense when you buy them off the shelf. What happens is they end up collecting and holding on to nutrients in the soil for when the plant needs them. And
Well,
yeah,
you know, with all this rain, you
It's
know,
like-
I'm out in the country. Oh, wow.
black gold.
Well, there's so many worms you
Anybody
can
wants to
rake
touch
them.
it?
I rake them all up and throw them in my garden.
You're such a good assistant. You're lucky
Really
to have you,
clean.
Brandon.
You don't. It doesn't smell like how you would think it would smell. Like
Great job, Dana.
Well, I'll be. I want some of it.
They don't pay you enough, man.
yeah. It's a really fine.
The shelf life on this mix is indefinite, guys. Store it like you store paint. Don't let it get sitting outside soaking wet. These nutrients are never going to go anywhere.
So,
I know this guy. He's got a whole bunch of
have you ever amended your soil using bokashi?
Have I ever what now?
Amended your soil using bokashi?
Have I used bokashi? Absolutely. Yep, absolutely. I've used bokashi.
And in what way did you end up using it?
And so it's made to kind of speed up this whole process of cooking your soil and making it ready and plant available. If you're re-amending old soils, you can use it to help speed things up as well. But more than anything, it speeds up the composting process is what the bokashi is for. It's got molasses in it and different sweeteners to help feed the microbes. Always microbe food.
Well, I'm also talking about using the organic waste to compost using the bokashi blend.
Yeah.
And then dumping it in soil. Have you used that waste for your soil?
You know, I have not used it in like any kind of like outside composting or anything like that at all either. But yeah, absolutely, you can use that to break down and make compost for your mix. Absolutely, yeah, it works great. Go
I have
ahead.
a question on rainwater. Is there anything that you need to be careful of when collecting rainwater?
That's
for
a
instance,
great question.
asphalt roof.
Yep.
I've heard the petroleums in them may
Yep.
not be good for plants.
There's a lot of shingles nowadays that have antifungal properties on them too, and so
Yeah, you
it's,
don't want that.
yeah, it's very important to pay attention if you was to use rainwater, where you're harvesting it from, and the quality of it too. Because yeah, if there's something in that, whether it be asphalt related or antifungal properties from your shingles on your roof, the last thing you want is to kill what you're trying to grow and cater to.
Would that change the pH of that rainwater?
It absolutely could. Yeah, absolutely.
So if you check,
Yep.
so if your rainwater is in pH, you could still have it contaminated.
Correct. Yep. Yep.
Yeah, I read that online and I was like, well, that totally changes what I'm going to do then.
Yeah.
I have a
Just gotta get
crock.
in there.
I just set a crock out in the driveway, just let it fill with rain.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I take a cup and,
Yeah, that works beautifully. Absolutely.
yeah, so that's
Yep.
your rain.
Yep. If a lot of times you're trying to catch it off of a rooftop or a gutter, especially in urban environments, and if you don't filter it properly, or if it starts collecting, bad stuff, I've even had people put bluegill in their rain barrels.
Put what?
Bluegill,
Oh,
little
alright.
small
Yeah,
fish.
yeah.
Yeah, they clean it.
Tasty.
They'll eat the mosquito larvae that form in there. They'll add to the nutrient content of the
Huh.
water over time.
That's
And they'll live through the winter in a rain barrel. Bluegills will quite easily. Just don't overstock it.
interesting.
Go fresh,
But also just know that this mix, this secret recipe, this is always designed to use with clean water sources, It's always designed to be used with compost teas and spikes and layers, different organic amendments to make this happen. There's your compost tumbler that I was talking about. When you make this recipe, you put it in this tumbler, you agitate it for a couple weeks, and then it becomes plant available. It'll heat up really hot. I mean, hot to where you don't want to stick your hand in it hot. And then it will cool back down over time. As long as you're agitating it in a compost tumbler every day, it takes about 2 weeks before it cools back down and you can use it. There's different things you can add into it to stimulate that, to speed it up. Like he said, that bokashi product that we sell here really speeds that up. You can add microbes and bacteria from products like that grease or Mycos or Recharge or anything like that to help speed that process up. If you just have it stored it's stagnant in garbage cans, it's important to try and move it around at least every couple of days to introduce oxygen into it and help the breakdown and cater to the good bacteria. Obviously, nutrients don't evaporate over time. You can store this soil indefinitely. You can store this soil for a couple of years if you want to pretty easily. I also put a recipe for the clone mix on here as well. When you're taking cuttings and clones and small plants, this mix is a little bit too potent for them. And so it's just watered down. It's your regular living soil mix that we just talked about. Also cut with cocoa coir and perlite, and then you can put your clones in there beautifully. This is also one of the most important parts of the whole situation is the way that you build your pots with this mix. In this book, there's a little display. I open to this page every time I build my pots, every 2 months. And so you always want to pay attention to why this is the way it is as well. You put blood meal in there to help cater to the microbes, earthworm castings in there to help cater with the microbes. So when you're making pots for your plants, guys, you're not just putting this soil mix in there and going. You're putting some layers in there to make it all work right, make it all last the entire length of the season. You know, you don't want to run out of nutrients halfway through, and this is one of the easiest ways to get from start to finish with just water only. It's not as intricate as it looks. Once you start doing it, you can set up 6 or 8 pots at a time and just build up layers before you put your cutting in. But this is the way to ultimately build your pots to get them through that flowering phase. This is definitely one of the most important things, just like the recipe.
Is it worth doing any of this if you don't follow it like exactly? Like
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
I tried a bunch of things.
Yep. And especially if you're buying one of these bags that are already pre-made, you could still do a system like this with this pre-made bag, or you can just plug and play as well.
I mean, like the whole thing, like the whole recipe and everything, you just kind of mixing stuff together, but loosely following it.
You just want to stay as consistent as you can, because if you're getting good results, you want to be able to repeat the process. And so if you do miss out on a couple things, make sure you take note of that, because in the end of the grow, if you start seeing yourself short, you know why. Or if you see some sort of deficiency or some sort of malfunction, you can pinpoint it. So record keeping is really, really good, especially in any kind of agriculture. If you do it right, you want to be able to repeat it. And so if you don't follow the recipe exactly, make sure you write it down that you didn't follow the recipe exactly. I've been in making recipes where I'm come short a item or two, and I still make it anyway. I'll go to the store within the next couple days. I'll buy it. I'll add it in. It'll still do its thing. So you can still continue on if you're missing a thing or two off the item and get it later and add it in.
It's like making a cake.
It is. It's
You
just
don't
like
add
making
that-
a cake.
You don't add that extra egg in there, guess what? You ain't gonna have a fluffy cake.
That's for sure.
Can't go to the neighbors and ask for a cup of
Right.
perlite though.
No. Well, you can if you come to my house.
That's true.
I have it if you want.
We'll talk a little bit about brewing teas as well, guys. Actively aerated compost teas. You'll see them in books AACT. are excellent source of boosting microbial activity. Teas are a blend of amendments, bubbled in a bucket, caters to certain stages of growth. There's flowering teas, there's vegetative teas, and there's all-purpose teas as well. This picture is a company that sells an air pump, hooks up to this, keeps bubbling in a bucket. That thing's super high tech. Or you can just get a 5-gallon bucket with a little air hose and a fish pump. But what you do is you take these teas and you brew them for anywhere from 24 hours to 3 days. Before you use them, you strain them out, use them on your plants, and you'll increase the microbial activity. All of that helps break down the nutrients, making sure that your plant can use the nutrients.
I have a question real quick.
Yeah.
Regular tea, like Lipton tea or any of those green teas. Okay, I'm asking because my neighbor always cut the string off and she put those in her compost. Always put, do you too? I do coffee.
I just learned about that.
It will cater to all that stuff and absolutely become nutrients for your plants at some point in time in the future.
Even after you've brewed it. And
Yep. Heck yeah.
Okay.
Yep. This is a great recipe for a tea. It's a 3-day tea. You don't have to make it a 3-day tea. It can be a 2-day tea, but these are great items to use in an all-purpose tea. This is a good one to use time and time again. I can't tell you how many of this recipe I've made. Kelp meal, bird and bat guano, all-purpose. Molasses really helps cater to the. I don't think that's spelled right.
Now, is this better for flour or veg or both?
This is an all-purpose one, so both, all the way. And then the book will help and depict this true living organics book. It has flowering teas and vegetative teas in it. I just didn't put them in the slideshow
How long
today.
does that stay good for?
That's a great question. I wouldn't hang on to these teas very long. Yep. You start hanging on these teas very long, and the pH will really start to do some funny stuff. Nutrients over time will fall out or start to grow anaerobic bacteria.
Liquid fish, I'm guessing it would.
Yeah. You start to get stuff to grow, and it gets out of balance. And as long as you keep it to this 24-hour, 48-hour, 36-hour, you're totally fine. Layers and spikes. Spikes are the same dry amendments. They're used to create a layer in the pot. The roots can grow in and around it. Or a spike is where you put a hole next to the root zone and you fill it up with a little dry amendment or combination of dry amendments. It allows the roots to grow in and around it if they want, away from it if they want. But it really helps, especially for long day crops where you have something that's going for 60, 80, 90 days. These are recipes to make a little dry amendment spike or layer concoction. I use old coffee cans to put this little recipe inside of. So I have a coffee can full of my veg spike and layer and a coffee can full of my flowering spikes and layers. And it just depends on where I'm catering here. But this is a beautiful combination to use. Obviously it takes quite a bit of time for this stuff to become plant available. And so you want to really get ahead of your game on spikes and layers. You never want to put a spike right in a root zone. You mess it up quite a bit because this stuff is really hot, not broken down by the nutrients yet or by the microbes yet, and just not plant available yet. And so you could stunt plants by putting these too close to the root zone. You really want the roots to kind of grow out towards them over time. You want to give the bacteria time to start breaking them down before your roots hit them. We're working right up on the end, guys. Most life is possible only because the Earth's crust is dusted with a bit of soil where we can grow food. This Earth has just a little bit of topsoil on it. I think less than 2% of the Earth is topsoil, and that's what caters to all life on this planet. Without that, we're nothing. We'd be gone pretty quick. And so it's important to use organic gardening practices to help cater to that soil environment, to help extend the life of that soil environment. All farmers know this. Even the farmers that don't use organic gardening practices know this, and they try as hard as they can to not overuse and overwaste. There's no farmer that has a bunch of nutrients to spare and let run off, that's for sure. And so, it's very important to cater to the soil. Guys, this is my presentation today. I really want to do some questions and answers here. Of anybody that might have questions and answers, I can have any details about this soil recipe. Clonex is in on this with us. Grease is in on this with us. Clonex has been around for over 30 years. They're a great product for rooting any kind of plant, cutting hard woody stems, trees, you name it. If you want to reproduce it, Clonex is a rooting hormone that will take a genetic copy of whatever plant you have and reproduce it.
Is that a powder?
It's in a gel form. There's powders that are sold, but I don't think Clonex offers a powder.
Now, and the Clonex gel is actually registered with the EPA, so it's approved for use in all crops, including food crops. It's gel-based, not alcohol-based, but the gel, powders are the reason the gel was invented.
And this right behind you.
Plants, they're almost like a sponge, so when you take a cutting, it can create like an embolism in the plant. It's like a brain aneurysm. It's a bubble that blocks the passage of food. So the gel, when you stick it in the gel, it seals and protects that, helps prevent that embolism. That's why there's such a high success rate with the gel. And it's purple because it's got an antiseptic.
Cause I still use, the powder, I mean, you know, for indoor plants, just to root, to get the growth
Yeah.
off, I
Yeah.
root it, it works fine.
Yeah, it, you know, anything with IPA is gonna work.
Okay.
It's just, the success rate, you know, you might get a higher success rate with a gel versus
Okay.
a powder. Yeah.
Alright.
And
Yes,
it's
of
made in
course.
Michigan. We're family owned and operated.